it's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Welcome to the live show. Thank you for downloading the RJ Young Show podcast, wherever it is you get your podcast. And today, a couple of things that I want to get into. I made an upload about Ohio State and Maryland being canceled. Go check that out. It's 8 minutes of goodness. Also want to direct you to foxsports.com, where I wrote a piece about USC and the likelihood of them making the playoff, and how this schedule for them is setting up kind of nicely for them to get to the Pac-12 championship game, if nothing else. Also, video over on CFB on Fox, where I'm talking about this at some length. So go check that out on their YouTube channel. And yeah, I'm wearing my Billy Bob jersey, Varsity Blues today. No guest today. You just got me today. So deal with it. Let's start with the headline, because I always do a bad job of this. JT Daniels, Stetson Bennett, Dwan Mathis, and Georgia's quarterback path forward is anything but known and certain, because Kirby Smart continues to just mess with it. So think about Kirby Smart from the standpoint of recruiting, and you can't do a whole hell of a lot better than what he's done since arriving at Georgia, some 4 years ago. And take a look at who he has been able to recruit. He flipped Jake Fromm from Alabama. And we don't give him much credit for that, because Jake Fromm didn't turn out to be all that great fifth-round draft pick, even as Georgia always felt like they were a quarterback away, even as Georgia was able to beat Oklahoma in the 2017 Rose Bowl with what I think is the best Oklahoma football team of the Lincoln Riley era, still just a defense away. But also, he had Jacob Eason on that team. He ends up going to Washington. He gets drafted. He ends up winning the commitment of Justin Fields, who became the first ESPN #1 overall player to commit and sign with Georgia after getting into a fierce rivalry with Penn State, among others, to try to get him. Justin Fields, as you know, is not just the quarterback at Ohio State. He's one of the two best players in all of college football, and for my money, the best player in all of college football. He also brought in Dwan Mathis, and what I thought was really interesting is Dwan Mathis was going to go to Ohio State. Justin Fields is going to transfer to Ohio State, so they flip. One goes to Georgia, one goes to Ohio State. You end up adding Carson Beck to this 2020 class, who I believe could play in any one of these games that Georgia's played in and give you better production than Stetson Bennett. And you have a commitment from one of the top quarterbacks in this class, in Brock Vandagriff, and the guy that Lincoln Riley wanted before he was able to land Caleb Williams. And yet and still, Georgia still didn't have a damn quarterback. I'm not sure what we are supposed to take from Kirby Smart not playing the best quarterback, except he just doesn't like dudes. Because as far as we know, JT Daniels is healthy. And this is a JT Daniels who was starting ahead of Kedon Slovis, Matt Fink, and Jack Sears when he was at SC, blows out his ACL. Kedon Slovis ends up taking over the job after Jack Sears ends up transferring, right? He's at Boise State now, battling with Hank Bachmeier for the starting job over there. And Slovis might have been the third best player on that depth chart. He gets a concussion, takes him out of a top 10 game against Utah. Matt Fink goes and passes for all the yards against Utah, giving Clay Helton the biggest win of his season last year. And we're back with Kedon Slovis and Graham Harrell. And Slovis passed for 381 yards against Marvin Lewis and Antonio Pierce's defense, and what I think is the best defense they're going to face, if not the second best defense in all of the Pac-12. All to say, JT Daniels chose to transfer from SC, not, I don't think, because he couldn't compete and win, but because Georgia was going to be a better opportunity for him to compete and win. So, if he stays at USC, I don't think that USC becomes a national championship caliber football team, though that's always on the table because it's SC, it's a blue blood program, and when they recruit well, they're going to be good, and they have an opportunity to recruit well because every kid that grows up in SoCal ends up wanting to go to USC at one point or another, and even in a bad year, he lucks into Brew McCoy and Chris Steele in the same damn year when Brew McCoy and Chris Steele had committed and signed elsewhere. McCoy was going to Texas, Steele was at Florida, and he ends up getting them both playing football for him in 2020 this year, catching passes from Kedon Slovis and, rushing ends matching up against the best wide receivers that Arizona State has. And that ain't no small task because the last two best wide receivers that Arizona State has had have been first round draft picks, right? Brandon Ayuk and, of course, N'Keal Harry, who was the first wide receiver that Bill Belichick ever drafted in the first round. Not a small thing. Then there's Eno Benjamin in the back. What I'm saying is Arizona State's a really good football team, and I thought they should have won that game last Saturday, and it's just the Clayton Helton experience for them to luck up and win that game. But to JT Daniels transferring from SC to Georgia, I thought it was because he thought he was going to start or could beat out store brand Cam Newton, because you'll remember store brand Cam Newton was brought in to be the starting quarterback last January by James Coley. Store brand Cam Newton was going to be that dude, and then store brand Cam Newton decided to opt out in August. There were actual conversations being had about store brand Cam Newton deciding to opt out because he's going to get beat out by JT Daniels, even as JT Daniels was not actually fit and healthy to play football. So store brand Cam Newton opts out, and we're all expecting to hear that JT Daniels is the starting quarterback, and we see Dwan Mathis trot out there against Arkansas. Dwan Mathis does not look good in the first half. He gets the hook. Stetson Bennett comes in, stabilizes the offense. They go get a win against Arkansas. But let's not forget that Stetson Bennett was a walk-on quarterback at Georgia. And not just a walk-on quarterback at Georgia, not a great quarterback, the kind of dude that needed to leave to go to JUCO so that he could come back to Georgia, right? Like, he needed to actually get sent down to the minor leagues so he could come back to Georgia and be the scout team quarterback. That was the thought. Also, Stetson Bennett was playing Baker Mayfield against Roquan Smith and them leading up to the Rose Bowl, which is going to be a trivia question that only real college football fans know or Georgia fans know. You can't convince me that Stetson Bennett is a better quarterback than JT Daniels. You could probably talk me into that being on the table with Dwan Mathis because I know what kind of an athlete Dwan Mathis is. But Mathis has completed just 40% of his passes this year. So he ain't the passer that JT Daniels is. And let's not forget, Daniels comes out of Mater Dei, the same Mater Dei that won national championships. The Monarchs are an absolute blue blood among high school football. It's the same place that gave us Matt Leinart and Bryce Young and Jeremiah Cradell, right? And the list goes on. Darian Green Warren at Michigan. I can keep throwing names at you to show you just how cold Mater Dei is. And for JT Daniels to lead them as quarterback is not a small thing. As a matter of fact, there was lots of conversation about JT Daniels and Brew McCoy being that tandem, like, to lead USC into the future. 100%, right? Didn't work out that way because Daniels chose to transfer, even as Brew McCoy was back. But I thought that Daniels going to Georgia meant that they were going to be a national championship caliber football team because they've been a quarterback away for quite literally 4 years. And it's not because they can't recruit a quarterback. If anything, there's an argument to be made that, Georgia has recruited a better at quarterback than anybody in college football, period. Like, absolutely anybody in college football, period. And yet and still doesn't know what the quarterback situation is going to look like in 2021 because now you got a Brock Vandagriff going, wait a second, there's a logjam here. I didn't expect for there to be a logjam when I arrived here. I expect there to be a clean succession plan, which also means that you're probably looking at not one, not two, but three dudes could potentially transfer as quarterbacks from Georgia if this transfer rule goes through. And even if it doesn't, like for JT Daniels, I think he's stuck at Georgia because the law of averages for players that have transferred more than once in their careers does not do him any favors. But for Carson Beck, hell yeah, he can go anywhere he wants. Dwan Mathis probably gets an opportunity to play at a group of 5 school as a starter right now, or maybe rehabilitate himself at a Power 5 school, right? Where he gets to be more accurate with the football. And then we're talking about what the hell is going to happen with Brock Vandagriff when he gets there. Well, let's say that Kirby Smart goes and pulls in another quarterback. Is Vandagriff one to want to say? Probably not, right? These are all things that I find to be interesting.